everybody. Thanks for joining me today, ladies. So we wanted to just take the opportunity, given all the information that we've been facing daily on our Instagram feeds about racism, police brutality, the George Floyd incident in particular, we thought it'd be a great opportunity to just share a bit of an education and just discuss some of the issues that are currently in hand, as well as some of the other issues that some of ethnic minority and Black people in particular face on a day-to-day basis in 2020. So I just wanted to introduce the panel. So Jade, we have.
Hi, I'm Jade, also known as Jade Percy the Artist, and my background is multi-heritage, but of course largely Black, so I consider myself both Black and mixed.
Right, and then Mimi, just doing me.
Hi guys, so I'm a lifestyle content creator and I'm Nigerian by birth. I relocated, my whole family relocated to the UK when I was 6, so I largely grew up in England, and yeah, I'm going to share my experiences being a Black British female.
Wonderful. And Sarah, would you like to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi guys. I am a American born, obviously British based off of this accent. I grew up in the UK, but by blood I'm Nigerian. So my whole family are I'm like first generation British and American, I think you'd say. But yeah, I have Nigerian heritage, and I'd love to give my perspective as somebody who actually lives in America right now. And I can give both perspectives as a Black woman, having lived in the UK and currently living in New York, America.
So yeah, Melissa, I am largely a marketing specialist. I also do a lot of art myself, like Jade. So I am of Caribbean heritage. I have several mixes in my family, including Asian and, all kinds of things that you get in Caribbean heritage. Obviously from growing up in the UK. I think that, again, I might have a different viewpoint, so I'd be interested to share that as well. Yeah? Mm-hmm. That's where it's at. So
let's
get into it. Let's get to the meat. So obviously, given what's happened recently, in particular around the George Floyd incident, which seems to have kind of created this media uproar and this social media frenzy, I think it'd be probably best to go into that first. So should we start with you, Mimi? What are your thoughts on the current phenomenon and how that's happened?
I think as Black people, I think it's fair to say that we're outraged, we're angry, we're hurt, we're in a lot of pain. I've been speaking to people who look like me and people who share, my heritage, my culture, people who share the struggles I share. And the one recurring theme that I've noticed is pain. Like people, I don't think any of us can say we've not been emotionally affected by watching George Floyd die, on the street, begging for his mother, telling us he couldn't breathe, begging these officers to stop killing him. I don't think any of us have watched that video and not been emotionally impacted. And for me, I think everything that's going on in the world right now is so relevant. Riots relevant, the protesting is relevant, the looting is even relevant. And I think, there's a lot of people saying, well, it takes away, detracts from the cause, the looting and the rioting. But when we knelt, when Colin Kaepernick, when people in the NFL were kneeling and, passively protesting in a very calm manner, there were issues. People had a problem with that. So I do not feel like, I'm not for violence, but I'm not going to detract from the main issue, which is that police brutality is an issue, especially in the United States. Now, I cannot blame people who feel enraged. I can't blame people who feel hurt. I can't blame people who feel like their voices and their cries have not been heard when they have been protesting peacefully. So now looking for new avenues to make sure that their voices are heard. Now, for me, what I really struggle with and what really hurt me as a Black woman watching George Floyd die was, why is it that, the police were called because apparently he used a counterfeit $20 bill. Why should that be a death sentence? I completely I do not believe at all that if the police had been called on a white man who was suspected of using a counterfeit $20 bill, that would have led to the white man dying in the street. Why should that be a death sentence for a black man? I saw on social media this morning a white man saying, you know, him and George Floyd were both arrested for the exact same offense, using a counterfeit $20 bill. For him, it's a funny story he gets to tell at like parties, but for George Floyd, it's the end of his life. And for me, that's what pains me. That's what angers me. There's such an injustice in that. And the fact that only one of the officers who killed him, four officers it took to restrain him. Is that necessary? What was the need to have 4 officers kneeling and pressing on every single part of his body? Only one of them has been arrested, and we all know that that is in large part due to the fact that social media has really taken on the story, and George Floyd has taken on a life of its own. There are so many police officers that commit offences like this every day, and the black families never get justice. You know, it took 3 months almost for the Ahmaud Arbery police officer, not even police officers, the ex-police officer, to be charged. It took 3 months, only when social media really took up that story before the people that were responsible for murdering Ahmaud Arbery were actually charged. It outrages me that white people, not even just police officers, ex-police officers, civilians, you know, we saw it with Trayvon Martin, the name of his killer, George Zimmerman, walks free. You don't even have to have a badge to kill a white person, kill a black person and walk free and get away scot-free. And that, I feel, is why people are outraged, why people are protesting. Why do our lives not matter as much? Why are we dying for simple infractions such as allegedly using a $20 bill, or running in a white neighborhood and peering into a property that is not, you know, occupied? That's what Ahmaud Arbery was killed for. And the police had the nerve to tell his family that he was apparently stealing from that property and the landlord killed him.
The narrative changed.
That was a narrative that they told his family. And thank God that his family did not let it rest there. Thank God that they reached out to Sean King. Thank God that he was able to shed light and take it to his platform, use his influence and share the story. But it outrages me that this has been going on for centuries. Black people being killed, it being covered up, it not leading to prosecutions, and when there are prosecutions or federal indictments being brought, it not actually leading to convictions. Something has to change.
Yeah. What do you think what do you guys think about the sentencing of 3rd-degree murder for the primary officer that murdered George Floyd? What do you think of that sentence, Sarah?
Terrible. I think he should have got 2nd degree. That was straight up 2nd-degree murder. I mean, I'm not a criminal justice expert. I can't claim to know the ins and outs of the way similar cases have been prosecuted in the past, but that was a straight up murder. Obviously, his intent probably wasn't to murder him, but that was what happened. So essentially, that's 2nd-degree murder. I think a third degree just lessens the intensity of the issue. So I think it's just absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously, I think as well, I mean, what do you think about the fact that only one of the officers was charged, Jade?
So, of course, a 3rd-degree murder charge is a slap on the wrist of the murder charges. And, you know, I really don't think you could say, any normal human being could say, I knelt on someone's neck and I didn't expect there to be a repercussion of death. Who in their right mind, do you know, actually I want to put a pin in that because I don't want to account it to mental ill health, but who goes around and puts a knee in someone's neck and doesn't expect serious harm to be done, if not murder? It's a straight up murder in my mind.
Yeah, I do. I agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, obviously, if you cut off someone's wind supply, they will die inevitably. So I just wanted to move on a bit to talking about, you know, the wider issue and potentially, you know, the view of the Black community stereotyping, and how we've come to this sort of situation where it's become acceptable, or in today's society people almost expect or have been desensitized to the issue of the Black struggle and obviously the Black humanitarian right. Sarah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think with that we really need to go back to the history of systemic oppression as people of African origin, and the Black experience in America is just so unique in the sense that like most Black people in America didn't come off their free will, as we all know. It's not like Asians, who are essentially like model minorities that came over off their own free will and had the opportunity to build communities and actually keep the money within their society and progress in that degree. Black people obviously came over to the US for obvious reasons that started the whole oppression. And that lineage, and I like to call it almost like a generational curse, I think is what has brought the Black community to where we currently are. And just all of the crazy things that Black people have had to deal with, essentially, I think perpetuates that negative stereotype. And I think the lack of understanding and people kind of like being cognitively aware of the real history and the start of oppression for Black Americans, I think then again just kind of perpetuates that whole negative stereotype of us. And I think that was probably what was going on with this George Floyd case. And
I mean, on Sarah's point, do you feel that there is a way in which a Black person can be more palatable to operate in those environments? Or do you think like some Black people are more accepted? Because obviously, Sarah, you are of a middle class heritage, you speak very well, you're British. I mean, Jay, do you feel like any of this has an influence on how receptive the white community or white business will be to Black people?
I mean, of course, we have this standard within Western society, which is seen as ultimate ideal because it reaches this level of elitism. So if you have an accent that enunciates and really falls in, I guess in the UK it's called RP, the accent is called RP, received pronunciation. If you speak with that sort of accent, then you're taken more seriously. I've been on the phone several times with people and then they turn up and you don't get the overt racism. You won't say, oh, I didn't know that you were a person of colour, but you do get the, oh, you look slightly different than I expected, because you do have that telephone voice. And the reason I speak the way I do is because my mother was very insistent on it, because she was a firstborn Caribbean person in the UK, so she was very hyper aware that if she sounded remotely Caribbean, then that wouldn't get her very far. And I guess the same for me. And that's generally understood within the community, I think, and outside of the community. And while I have this privilege of an accent, I don't think it's necessarily the right thing at all. Not only is it very racist, within any culture or subculture, people develop their own, colloquialisms, their own slang among themselves, whatever race, culture or subculture you look at. And of course, it can be terribly ableist as well. Some people do have lower educational attainment, and a lot of the time that's not necessarily a mark on them. Touching on what Sarah said earlier, a lot of schools are quite underfunded. I mean, we have a sort of similar thing in the UK, where if you have a house that is very close to a school, then it's normally very, very expensive. You're going to be quite well off to be able to afford it in the first instance, and a lot of the time you're going to be statistically on whole white, European, British. So you're going to have the advantage where your kid is able to wake up and hop over to school in 5 minutes, where you've got a kid on the other side of town who's perhaps living in a high rise, has to get a couple of buses in, you know, having to get up earlier, so they're getting less sleep during a time of their life where they actually need the most sleep possible. They're going to school a lot of the time, you know, hungry. Perhaps there's not a lot of food in the house, or not enough money to be able to feed a good, nutritious diet. So you're going to school hungry, and it really isn't starting you up for the best start in life. Now, I guess this is really it isn't particularly entirely specific to Black people. We know it actually hits poor people quite a lot in urban areas, or poor people in sort of deserts. But a lot of the time, because of urbanization, because of movement of immigration, you'll actually find a lot of Black people are on the receiving end of poverty, essentially. And a lot of this is designed into the system. It's fine. I mean, it seems fine among us as a culture to be able to say, oh, well, you know, they didn't work hard enough in their life, so they didn't get the things that we think they deserve. But how can we say that when people are having children? And we need to think about these children, you know, possibly the cure for cancer is sitting in the project somewhere in Chicago, or in a council estate somewhere down in Hackney. How are we ever going to get the potential out of these people if we're not thinking about them as people, I think the rich definitely agree that there's a certain level of comfortability. The rich and the white, let me put that in there. The rich and the white agree there is a certain amount of comfortability that makes life enjoyable. What they don't agree on is that everyone deserves it for whatever reason, which I think is entirely inhumane in essence.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, Mimi, what do you think about you know, the point that Jade just raised?
Probably gonna be a bit controversial. Like, I completely agree with Jade when she brought up the fact about privilege, you know, and the reasons why Black people don't have, you know, the access, or it's not easily ready for a lot of Black people to speak in, what did you call it, RP?
Yeah,
it's not easily accessible. You know, the reason all four of us speak the way we speak today is because we are coming from privilege, not necessarily privileged backgrounds, but enough privilege that afforded us the luxury of being able to be well spoken, well enunciated. And this is a luxury that a lot of people, especially Black ethnic minority people, do not have. And I feel like when we say what we can do to improve our situation is improve education and, you know, speak better, I think we reduce the greater problem to a very minimal issue. Because what we want, of course, we want our community to be better educated, better spoken, but we have to accept that there are a lot of barriers in place that will prevent this from happening en masse. You know, think about the fact that sometimes a lot of the Black fathers are not in the family home. That leaves the Black mothers with a lot of pressure, perhaps raising 5 children, having to work 2 or 3 jobs. That means the firstborn children have to leave education sooner than perhaps they would have liked, have to get jobs to support the family, and that automatically starts to reduce the opportunities they have later in life. You know, so education and speaking better, yes, this will improve the way other people treat us, but this isn't an option that is going to be afforded to a lot of people that look like us. I really feel like what will help the issue is educating the white people, or the people that don't look like us, educating them on our struggle, educating them on, you know, who we are. Just because we wear a flat cap or because we listen to rap music does not make us criminals, does not make us aggressive, does not mean we are intimidating, does not mean that you should stop us and, you know, search us. And, you know, I think the education to really bring about change really needs to start with them.
Yes, like spot on. Yeah, like spot on. Just carrying on from what Mimi said in regards to white people really understanding the struggle and really getting the context of oppression, so then the system itself changes and the way we all relate to one another on a day-to-day basis. It's just, you know, would be better, hopefully. But I just want to hone in on, you know, just accountability on the Black side. And, you know, you mentioned, Mimi, you touched on the family subject. And I think that's something that we need to do better on in the Black community. I think, you know, before we even get to the point of, yes, the educational system needs to be better in, you know, lower socioeconomic level environments. But really, I think as a family unit, there needs to be a stronger kind of setting there. I think the Black man needs to stay in the house.
Agree.
And you know, I'm not saying every single nuclear family setup is ideal. You know, this is not everything is a monolith, but you know, studies just do show that people who come from stable family backgrounds just do tend to do a little bit better. So I think just having a more functional and solid family background is like the first step. You know, a really influential, strong mother and father figure. And then you go into your educational system, and then you sort out the resources that, you know, you need in order to function in the world as a successful person. I mean,
yeah, okay, no, absolutely. So I think a lot of that, what you said, kind of comes back down to sort of community building rather, and, you know, and Jade, I mean, you obviously have a point about that. Like, obviously, that might lead into.
Yeah, I have actually really strong views about this in general. The nuclear family, you know, it was really put forward in the 1950s as this model of the ideal family situation. In fact, you know, Edward Bernays, the father of modern PR and propaganda, actually used a lot of his work in order to hone in this idea that this is the ideal situation, you know, this 2.4 children, mum and dad together, which in my mind is essentially wrong. It's actually stemming from the Industrial Revolution. Prior to this, many families were agrarian, you know, they were working on farms, and they would be multi-generational. So you would have grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, cousin, all living maybe not in the same house, but definitely in the same proximity, on the same street, in the same area. So it wasn't necessarily mum and dad in the house alone with these kids. It's an incredibly stressful situation. If you look at any tribes throughout the world that are actually thriving to this day, even without, you know, Western intervention, you will notice they are multi-generational. It does have benefits of like lowering overall stress levels, pooling resources, and actually working together as a family unit. I think when we start to isolate the family into this post-industrial revolutionary European family unit, it's not doing them any good, and it's definitely not going to do us any good. We're community-based people, which is why, you know, many people won't understand when we say, you know, something like this has happened to poor George. Why has it felt so deeply between all of us? Because we're still incredibly tied to this idea of extended family. I feel like that's something that runs so deep in our DNA as Black people, that it's something that we're not going to shake. And by putting us into situations which weren't designed for us in the first instance, we're definitely not going to push further ahead.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I just think a family unit is important. I think what you have in a lot of dysfunction is people who don't even have that real extended family. I mean, the dad has been tucked in prison. They don't even know who their dad is. Like, I'm not trying, this is no shade or anything. It's just how it is. And at least know who your dad is, right?
I mean, I was raised by a single mother, and my father was still about, but you know, he wasn't the most involved father. In fact, he didn't even decide to live in the same town that I grew up in. You know, comparing this to a white friend I had in school whose parents divorced when she was 13. The father moved on the other side of town, and she was able to swap between two houses, and the other side of town was like a 10-minute walk away. You know, definitely the benefits there definitely would have shown. I'm sure there'd be very quantifiable things behind this that show those sort of levels of feelings of support, resilience, and happiness.